Hello, and welcome to another episode of Max's Monday podcast. Today I brought along this cute little boy named Jaden.
Hello.
So, a previous episode we talked about what robotics is and stuff, but I'm pretty sure most people still don't know what robotics is. So I feel like we should probably give them a proper introduction of what robotics is and the competition that we're planning for VEX.
So, you just want me to talk about VEX in general and Turning Point?
I think we should first start with VEX first and then be more general afterwards.
Okay.
I think that's more interesting to people that's listening to this.
So, VEX, our school, we buy a lot of parts from them. We buy metal pieces. We buy a lot of those. There's aluminum and there's stainless steel. The aluminum ones are way lighter. So we use those ones a lot on our robot because you want a lighter robot to go a bit faster. And then we can also purchase cool things like motors and sensors that can be really useful. So all of those parts, those motors, those sensors come together with all the metal pieces, and you actually building the robot, they come together to form something that plays our game, which is Turning Point.
So you're saying that this VEX company is basically telling us to buy these things and only these things can be used for the game.
Exactly.
That sounds like capitalism.
It is, and they're super expensive too.
How much?
I'm not sure, but if you want, I think like the super classroom, like the class or the competition kits for the old EDR stuff is like $500 to $1,000 ish.
Wow.
So, I mean,
in economics terms, it is called a monopoly.
Yeah, I mean, you could do first, but
I mean that's not that bad either, you know.
I mean, but VEX is cool too, I guess.
So what is Turning Point?
Turning Point is this year's VEX game, and they always change it up every year. And so this season, you can shoot the flags to turn them to your side to score points, or you can flip caps. So if your color is facing up, then you'll score points as well. So like the catch of this game is that it goes back and forth.
So any point you gain could theoretically be flipped at any point.
Yeah.
So it's basically a turning point.
Exactly.
The caps are a turning point. The flags are a turning point. Everything is a turning point in this game. That sounds weird.
It is weird, but it's pretty fun. It's not as high. There's not as high scores as last year. Like last year with In the Zone, you saw scores going up into like the hundreds, like past 100 even. But this year it's mostly like 30 and below. So you don't see as high scores, so a lot of super close games.
So you say that the general strategy of this game would be more tight-knit between like trying to go defensive and trying to like annoy the other team's points, for instance.
Yeah, I think this year in this game, well, this is true of probably most games, but a really good offensive robot will probably outplay a good defensive robot, because defensive robots aren't very good at scoring points. But if there's a really good offensive robot that can score points really well, they'll be able to score those maybe a bit less points while there's another robot playing defense on them. But they'll still be able to score those points, and the defensive robot can't really do much about it.
So you're saying that generally speaking, this game should be like mostly offensive?
Well,
ideally,
you want to have a good offense. I feel like that's a good strategy for this game. You can obviously still play defense, but I think if you have that as your main objective, you might suffer a little bit in the points, and the other team might be able to take a victory from you, just because, for example, if one robot is playing defense on another robot that's, say, trying to score flags, and they keep bumping them to mess up their scoring, then the other robot who's just free to do anything can still score points and things like that. So defense is good, but only to a certain extent for this game, I feel like.
How often was defense robots found in the zone, for instance?
In the zone, I didn't see very many at all. I know at Worlds there was one that made it to that played in the big stadium. That was really cool, but they didn't win, so that just tells you offensive robots, they did better, but that one they did really good. And I saw one from last season from Singapore that was really funny.
What they do?
They literally, when they could expand. It was like a wall, and it could just expand like that and just block robots. So it can be effective.
So
For
basically,
like,
area control.
yeah, it can be effective for maybe early to mid-season games, but once you get to late season, when people start getting really good at their offense, then defense starts becoming a little less effective.
So we're saying that initially it's better to play defense because people don't know what they're doing and they're often inaccurate. So being able to play defense will actually help them block even more points. But as time goes on, this gets refined over time because there's more time to experiment, more time to play test, more time to do things, and then from that you get the response that defense stops working effectively because points are getting more and more important instead of, say, blocking.
That's right. And then, like, for example, this season there are like flag bots who focus only on shooting the flags and flipping them. And then there are cap bots that only focus on flipping and putting the caps on the posts. And cap bots, like, they start like the ones that started at the beginning of the season, like, they work, but they're also really slow and kind of inefficient. But then there was one team from, I think, Texas. Yeah, I think it was from Texas. And he built a really good cap robot that was super fast and super efficient. So we can see that over the course of the season, like, maybe playing defense on a cap robot would have been really effective because they're not able to score any points if you're playing defense on them, just because they're slow and inefficient. But then we can see that as the season progresses, when there's a really good robot that can do like caps really well, defense can't stop everything from them because they'll still be able to outplay it. They'll still be able to maneuver around, and because of how fast they can flip and put caps onto the post, they can still score a lot of points.
I also remember that from last year there was this really common robot that was seen basically everywhere in the game, like the double spinning that quickly sucks caps. Cones up.
Like the rubber band Goliath intake for the cones.
So I think that is it true that if there's like a common design that's super good that's posted online early on, people actually just copy it?
I'm actually not sure. I think last year there was definitely like a meta, with like a ton of teams did like the double reverse 4-bar and then some kind of intake, either passive or active. There was some variation with that. But then this year it can go like anywhere basically. Like, we went to a tournament in Taipei and we saw, for flag bots, we saw like flywheels, punchers, catapults, and then so there were all those, and each had their own like little variations with like their intake and like how they designed everything. And then for lifting for the caps, we also saw like there was like a chain bar, there was 4-bar, 6-bar, 8-bar, double reverse 4-bar, cascade. Like, I think Vex probably wanted this game to be like a very diverse game. They wanted people to really be creative and finding their own way to solve the problem, which is like scoring points.
There are like a lot of tools that are provided. Like, there's so many different kinds of like axles, so many different kinds of like bars and screws and stuff.
Yeah, and there are quite a lot of parts, and you are allowed to cut them, and you can use some outside parts, and so that gives you quite a few options and a lot of possibilities.
So this, at the end of the day, is merely just exploration of using the tools given to just create solutions to problems.
Yeah, and you also want to win, right?
Yeah. So how would you get people into this game?
How would I get people into this game? Like,
how do you introduce people? How would you introduce people to it?
I think what we did at the beginning of this year is when we had all like the new people that signed up for our club, we put together like a Kahoot kind of thing to like teach the rules. It was like, oh, you put one cap on the post and you Alliance Park, how many points does that give you? Things like that. And you can also do like live demos of the game, because when it's really different. Like, when you see a video of a robot, like, it's really cool, but when you actually see one in person, it's definitely a lot cooler because it's like, oh wow, you actually built that and it works so well. It's so cool.
So you're basically saying that once you give them the amazing factor, people will be enticed into continue doing it. But say you don't have a robot yet. Say you're a completely brand new team.
Brand new team, that can be a bit tricky. I think that we struggled with that a bit last year as well.
Yeah, how did we start last year?
I don't really remember because last year was our first season, and we had a lot of people at the beginning of the year, and then that kind of declined as weeks went by. I think mostly the people that stayed were people who could already build and who could already code. So, I mean,
So you need kind of a luck. Like you need some luck, as in like people coming in kind of knows what to do already and incorporates
Yeah.
stuff immediately.
and people who are interested, you also have to make sure you keep them involved with your team. Like, make sure you give them things to do. Like, if they want to code, maybe put them with someone else who can also code and have them work together. Or if, say, you're building something, have them work on a specific thing. And if they're not as experienced, maybe just pair them with someone who knows what they're doing just to help them along, you know?
Oh, okay. So what's your opinion on this entire like robotics thing?
On just robotics as a whole.
Yeah.
I really like robotics. It's super cool because you can't there's no like one right way to solve any problem in robotics really. You can really do whatever you want just as long as you know how to build it and you can code it and then just actually execute it properly. So I really like robotics because of that. You can literally do anything within your constraints. So you can just go crazy, I guess.
But then at the same time, don't you at least need like some guidance into what you're doing, because you can't just randomly fuse things together and then suddenly a robot is born.
Well, that's where like a design cycle kind of comes into play. Like, you have to first brainstorm, like, what do you think you want to do? You have to research, maybe, is this actually possible? Is this something other people might consider possible? Like, is this a viable competitive option? Then you actually have to, try to build it. You have to prototype, and you have to keep going through that design cycle until to refine your design, essentially, and to make it the best it can possibly be.
So at the end of the day, it just comes down to just experience with learning how it works over
Yeah,
time.
I feel like you can't be super good at robotics right off the bat, you know? Like last year with our team, we kind of struggled. Our robot was pretty bad. It was really sad, and
Hey, we still got the worlds.
I mean, yeah, for being the best in Vietnam, of
And the
course.
only team in Vietnam.
Yeah, but the thing is, even though we were really bad last year, we learned so much, and that's really good because, I mean, we can't expect to be super good right off the bat. We have to take some time to really reevaluate your design, see what other teams are doing, and kind of incorporate all the things we learned back into our robot just to make it that much better.
That makes sense.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, it just really comes down to just experience, basically.
Yeah, and experimenting, just keep going through that design cycle over and over, and like see what other teams are doing. When you're at tournaments, make sure you learn how other teams are building, what their design rationales are, and things like that. Just get a sense of the game and how it works, essentially. So you have to be pretty experienced to start building something that's really good for this game. So yeah, if you're a beginner, you can still build something that's good. It just might not be the best because you might not have that knowledge of what other teams are doing regularly. So
That's okay, and that's okay because you're a beginner and you should be just experimenting.
yeah, exactly. So there's nothing wrong with being a beginner team or anything like that. And when you're a beginner team, try not to go for anything ridiculously complex that you might not be able to actually build. So make sure to start simple and work your way up as you learn more.
Okay, thank you, Jaden.
Thank you.
I'll see you next week. I am the audio person. We'll
You
see
are
you
not an
next
audio
week.
person. You
I
are a
am the
toaster.
person. Hey,
You
hey,
are-
whose
you
phone
are-
are you recording on? This is my phone. I am the
I don't care
audio
about the fact that it's
person.
your phone.
I am also editing this thing. Shut up, Max. Shut up. I'll see you next week. Oh my God,
We'll see you
Max.
next week.
Screw you, Max. How dare
Screw
you?
you too.
How dare you ruin my own pod? How dare you ruin your own podcast? This is your own podcast. Ah, next week.